Okay, good morning, doctors. Welcome to this morning's program from Spinal Kinetics. My name is Dr. Kronk, and welcome to the program, The Worst Deposition Mistake You Can Make as a Chiropractor, or as a doctor in general, any doctor. Anybody that is making this mistake is killing themselves or killing, the deposition itself. Now, before I get started, I just want to make sure I want either my staff or one of you as the doctors to actually just type in, hey, I can hear you just fine. We hear you just fine, so that I can get started. So just go ahead. There's a question box right there where you can ask questions. Just type in, yes, I can hear you just fine. Okay, I'm just waiting for that right now. I don't see that yet. Yes, okay, good. So thank you, doctor, and thank you, doctors. So let's go ahead and get started this morning. I'm really excited to be delivering this to you this morning because it's actually important. It's important if you're going to grow a injury practice. And I know a lot of you, I've trained across the country now for years and years and years, and I have so much experience with this, which I'll go through and I'll start to explain a little bit, as I do this program this morning. But this is a very, very, very fundamental program. And if you catch what I'm saying this morning, or in the afternoon, I don't know what time zone you're in, but if you catch what I'm saying, you're going to pick up something that's very, very profound this morning. And I hope I can impart that to you. So let's go ahead and get started. What do you think it is? What's the worst mistake you can make in a deposition? And by the way, when you're in a deposition, one of the things that is being looked at, especially if you're looking for attorney referrals, being bad in depositions just kills it. It absolutely just kills it. You can have a great relationship. You can have an attorney that's sending you, 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, 100 cases a month. Why? Because he believes in you as a doctor, and he believes in your ability as a doctor not only to take care of his client, but also to be able to communicate in certain venues, such as a deposition or in trial. And when you can't do that, it absolutely kills those referrals. Totally kills them. So the bottom line is, what you want to do is you want to have a lot of confidence and a lot of certainty with what you're doing. So what is it that kills it, though? Because it's the same thing that's causing your waiting room not to be filled with injury patients. It's the exact same thing. It's the same thing that causes you to have a lack of relationships, of medical providers that are constantly referring injury patients into you, or a lack of attorneys that are actually supplying you with a constant stream of new patients. Now, that constant stream could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 10. I mean, in injury work today, it's a very lucrative market. Now, it's not lucrative like, okay, anybody's extracting from a patient or from an insurance company or an industry more than what they should be. Services today are getting more and more expensive, but the injury client, the injury patient, has a very specific and definite set of needs, and those needs cannot be met usually in a very short amount of time, because the patient needs a lot more than that. So what I'm about to show you today, you don't learn in school. You did not learn this in school. Matter of fact, it was impossible for you to get it in school. So if you think that what I'm showing you today is something that you got or should have gotten from school, I'm sorry you didn't. And I don't care where you went, it just didn't happen. I know. I've been teaching this subject for far too long. This is not occurring in the schools. You might have paid $100,000, $200,000 for your education. You did not get it. Right? It's unfortunate, but that's just the case. And it's really not your fault that not understanding this has caused a lot of providers that are really, really good providers, excellent providers, to not really capitalize in the injury market. So it's also been the #1 cause of business failure. And if you look at it in your own, when I show you this, in your own business right now, what's going to happen is, as I show you this on this webinar this morning, you're going to look at it and say, yes, this is a thing that causes me not to be able to, not to have the injury practice that I may have wanted. So it's also the road to as large as you want to be, as big as you want to be, either as a solo provider or as a person that has multiple clinics. I mean, the sky is the limit, and the limit is you. You're the limit in your universe or your reality. You're the limit. So, you know, it's whatever you're willing to take the brakes off of. And what I found in my own life is those things that I'm passionate about, those things that I fully understand and know. I get very passionate about, and those are the things that I get very, very successful with. So, what is the worst mistake a chiropractor can make in deposition? It's also the worst mistake that a medical doctor can make in deposition, but I'm going to tell you, medical doctors do not make this mistake nearly as much as doctors of chiropractic do. I have spent years and years and years with both, and I will tell you that the chiropractic profession suffers from this more than I believe any other profession. And that's not a cut. Again, you didn't get a lot of the information in the school and in the educational process, especially when it comes to injury work. So what is that mistake? Well, the mistake is being uncertain. The mistake is having diagnostic uncertainty. See, everything in an injury case, everything for the patient, for the attorney, for the insurance company, for everybody involved, for the employer, if it's employer-based, for the team, if it's team-based, let's say it's an NFL injury, let's say it's a war injury, it doesn't matter the venue. It all comes down to, what's the injury? What's the injury and how bad is it? That's what everything comes down to. Everything revolves around that. Now, depending on how bad the injury is, depends on how much treatment benefit is allotted, how much time is allotted. There's a whole lot of factors to it, but diagnostic uncertainty is the #1 problem in depositions. And I know I have helped so many doctors. I've had so many times. Doctors calling me the day before, the hour before, a half hour before, mid-deposition, on break from a deposition. Well, how do you answer this question? What do you do with this? And what they're doing is they're wanting me to give them certainty, because they know the certainty translates into a great deposition. So what is certainty? Let's just talk about it. And rather than define it, I want you to feel it. I want you to understand it by feeling it. That's what I want you to do, right? So this is an image of a man and a wife and their kids. And I want you to look at this, and I want you to relate this into your own life. There are things that you are absolutely certain about. And it may be the love of your wife. It may be the love of your kids. But every one of us has things that we're absolutely certain about. So what is certainty? Because we got to know what it is so that we know when we're in it and when we're out of it. So certainty is knowing without any counter idea. There's no confusion. There's no counter idea. I love my kids. I would die for my kids. I would back my kids up 100%, no questions asked. I love my wife. I love my parents. Okay? That's certainty. Now, nobody in the world could come and convince you otherwise. Nobody could sell you something new that goes, oh, wow, I lost that certainty. That's what certainty is, right? Certainty is the feeling that you might have of your parents being with your kids and how important those relationships are. Now, if you didn't have relationships like that, then think of something else. But every single one of you today has things that you're absolutely certain of. And if you inspect that, you'll realize that That certainty is you know, and you don't have any counter idea or intention or anything else to what you know. And nobody else's misunderstanding of what you know influences your understanding of what you know. That's what certainty is. And just like I'm showing you these pictures, that's what it feels like. It feels certain. It feels relaxed. It feels comfortable. It feels unchaotic. It feels unrushed. It feels unchallenged. It feels amazing. That's what it feels like. Now, what does it feel like when you're uncertain? Completely different. How are the people around you affected by your uncertainty? Completely affected. So when a doctor is uncertain, his staff is affected. Everything is affected. The patients are affected. Now, you can't fake certainty. You can't fake it. You can say, well, okay, make it, I'm going to fake it till I make it. Well, certainty is it's a vibe. People sense it. Okay, you can't fake it. And it's very important in a deposition. It really is. And it's very simple. Now, people that are uncertain are constantly in their head. Pro, con. Oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Which road should I take? Should I go down this road? God, I went down this road before and I failed. How do I know this is the right road? Well, maybe this is the right road. I like this guy. Maybe he's selling me something that this could help. Okay? Constantly puzzled, unsure, confused, certain then uncertain, certain then uncertain. God, I go out, I'm doing diagnostic testing, I run into an attorney, the attorney says he doesn't like the testing. Oh, now I'm uncertain. I'm uncertain about what I'm doing. Okay? Now, for the doctors who are on the line today, one of the things that we have a lot of experience with at Spinal Kinetics is doctor uncertainty. When I bring in new staff into Spinal Kinetics that are going to be on the main line with the doctors, and I have some of the best staff. Those of you that have not interacted with Tanya before, or Tracy, but Tanya is more on the front lines because she's the rad tech that you communicate with, is a top rad tech. She's worked for some of the top organizations in the country. Okay, so when she first came in, true story, what I said is, look, you're in the first couple months, you're going to drop your jaw at the questions that are asked because there's a lot of uncertainty on just the very simple aspect of being able to diagnose the severity and location of a patient's injury when they injure their spine. Now, they all go through it. Everybody goes through it at Spinal Kinetics. They're like, oh my God. It's like, yes, that's why we're here as a company. That's why we're bold enough to be a national company, and the environment needs a national company like Spinal Kinetics badly. It always will. It needs more than Spinal Kinetics. It needs other national companies. Right? Now, anything that you see here on this sign is a deposition killer. Anything that's not clear, anything that's unsure, anything that's explained in a confused way or is not sure, anything that baffles the person is a deposition killer. Absolute 100%. So here's the thing, doctors. When a person doesn't have certainty, the biggest argument that they're having in their own mind is with themselves. And I don't know if you've experienced it before, but what happens is, like you can say, okay, this happens all the time for us at Spinal Kinetics. We're like, how in the world can a doctor determine the severity and location of a spinal ligament injury without excessive motion testing? It's not possible. You can't. Right? So if doctors aren't testing, or they're not testing on every patient that they think needs that has ligament injury, how in the world are they doing it? Well, I explained to my staff, they're not. They're completely blind. They're not. Now, the doctors out there, and I know I've communicated with you so many times, so many doctors. It's the confusion of, well, this looks good. Yeah, I should do this. No, I'm not sure if I should do this. Yeah, I should do this. Well, I should do this on this patient because this one is going to be in a trial, and this could be a big settlement. or I got to get this attorney a big settlement. All bad, all wrong from our point of view, right? Because it's not, you're not certain. You're not certain about, okay, how do I determine the damage to this patient? So what happens is there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty within the practitioner's mind. We know that. That's what we're up against in spinal kinetics. That's our biggest opponent, is the two doctors that we enroll. The one that says yes and the one that gets confused. The one that gets confused, we get frustrated with. The one that knows, we love. Right? Because here's the thing. And I don't know if you've ever been around this before, if you've experienced this for yourself, but confusion and uncertainty is contagious. It's not attractive. It's repelling. So when I'm asked a lot of times, well, what's the key to an injury practice? Well, the biggest key to an injury practice is the complete certainty. The most fundamental and basic is the complete certainty of an understanding how to diagnose the severity and location of the injury. Second step then is how to best treat it. And third step is how to document it in such a way. You're in a medical legal realm, right? So a lot of doctors have a lot of fear in that realm. Well, your fear is what you don't know. That's what your fear is. It's not what you know. What you know takes your fear away. That's what takes it away. Looking at all the factors you don't know causes fear. Looking at the factors that you do know causes fearlessness. And that's what I'm talking about today. That's what causes certainty, absolute certainty. So being uncertain is contagious. It's repelling. So how do how does a doctor, so if we're saying, okay, great, how do you become certain? Well, it's easy. Remember, we said certainty. I said certainty was knowing without any counter idea. You're not going, well, I should do this. No, I shouldn't do this. Yeah, I should do this. Oh, no, I shouldn't do this. Okay, so how do you get to that point? Well, there's only one way to get to that point. It's practice. There's only one way to get there. And it's the only way. Now, you'll think I'm doing a sales pitch for spinal kinetics. I don't care how you get there. I don't care how you do excessive motion testing. Whether you do it with spinal kinetics, you do it yourself, you do it with somebody else, I don't care. Now, I'll tell you exactly from my point of view why you need it to be third party, why you need it to be unbiased. And a lot of you you're gonna hit it. And unfortunately, you might develop a relationship for a year or 2 years that you think, my God, this is fantastic. And when you hit the reason why you want it to be unbiased and third party, and it destroys you in a deposition, and then it destroys that relationship, you'll go, oh, that's why. The biggest way that you become certain, dropping back to certainty, is practice. When Michael Jordan takes the last second shot, he's not thinking, okay, I don't have enough time. Wow, this guy's got his hand up in my face. This guy's big. This is too far out. I'm not quite comfortable with this shot. He's not thinking about anything like that. That's called certainty. And when you have it, you know you have it. And when you don't, you know you don't. If you don't, it requires practice. That's all it requires. That's the fundamental. Now, being uncertain of the patient's real diagnosis. That's the thing that kills you in a deposition. It totally kills you. Now, I can get on with, if you listen to doctor calls, and I wish we could record doctor calls. My staff has actually said, my God, I wish we could record these calls, right? Because doctors will call, and they have a problem with deposition or too much treatment with care, or they're being attacked in some way. There's a lot of various reasons why I get called, and I do a lot of calls. And the first question I have is, what is the patient's injury? Now, the typical answer I get is, well, doc, they were in a 45-mile-an-hour rear impact injury, rear impact auto accident. I'm like, okay, good. They had an incident that can cause injury, but what's the injury? I mean, did they break their finger? Did they amputate their toe? Did they break their femur? What did they do? What was their injury? That's the biggest key you have to understand. You want to grow a humongous practice internally. And I know that you hear me right now. I know that you hear me. And I know that you need to be able to answer that question, and you have to have 1,000% certainty on it. What is the patient's injury? Where is it and how bad is it? If you can't do that, you can't be certain. And if you don't have that fundamental foundation, I don't care, you can fake it, you can do all kinds of things, but you're not going to grow, and you're not going to enjoy the growth that you have. It's going to be chaotic for you. And it'll be chaotic for the people around you. So, diagnosis, what is it? Well, it's always been the same thing. Identify the nature by examination of the symptoms. Identify the nature of an illness or a problem by examination of the symptoms. Now, what does nature mean? Well, nature is anything physical. Anything out in nature is physical. It's not spiritual, it's physical. Okay, so identify the physical cause by examination of the symptoms. So let's take a look at the symptoms of a common ligament injury. Okay, migraine headaches. 38 million Americans have that badly. Shoulder pain. Okay, neck pain. Good. Ear pain, ringing in the ears. Disturbances in concentration. Numbness and tingling and weakness in the arms. Difficulty breathing. Low back pain. Neck pain. Visual disturbances. Dizziness. You look at this symptom list right now, doctors, and you tell me what on this list does your patient have that you're currently treating that's not on this list. Now, the first thing that's going to come up is uncertainty. Well, how do I know? How do I know that's what the patient has? How do I know that's what they have? They could have this, they could have that. That is the land of uncertainty. And it's not a very fun place to be. The land of certainty is done with practice. How do you know? You look. And when you look, you will see. I've looked for years and years and years. And you will see. It's ligament. Now, so we diagnose, we look at the symptoms, and we say, what's the most common cause of that symptom? Well, it happens to be a ligament condition. Now, there's 220 specialized ligaments that hold the spine together. I don't need to educate anybody on the call today the importance of alignment to reduction of function. And alignment is not just physical position, it's also motion alignment. So you can have abnormal motion or abnormal position causing interference to the system, causing dysfunction in the system. That's called a spinal subluxation. It's also called a spinal instability. So it's this ligament condition. Now, if we look at injuries, injuries are always a derangement. There's always a derangement with an injury. There's no way in your mind that you can give me any injury that something didn't get deranged. If I smacked you with a baseball bat in the knee and I shatter your kneecap got deranged. If I hit you in the head with a ball-peen hammer and basically I bruise your head, something got deranged. If I cut you, something got deranged. If I shoot you with a bullet, something got deranged. So there's no injury without a deranged body part. Period. None. Nada. Anybody that's uncertain of that, again, you got to look at it. There is zero way to injure a body without deranging the part. Now, a lesion is a medical term or a healthcare term that is damage. So we could say, we could call it a lesion. We can call a herniation a lesion. We can cause excessive motion to the spine, a lesion. We can call a fracture a lesion. We can call a tumor a lesion. Okay? So we have this thing in medicine and we have this thing in healthcare that's called a biomarker. They're wonderful because they're objective. Remember, we're trying to find the physical cause, right? So a biomarker generally refers to a measurable indicator of some biological state or condition. So we could have a blood glucose test, and if the numbers are at such a level, we would say they have diabetes. We can have an HIV antibody test in the blood. If it's found, we can say the person has HIV. There are many, many biomarkers. What makes them wonderful is they're objective. Now, what a lot of doctors don't know, especially in the injury world, I don't know how anyone could not know this, but it does come up. There are imaging biomarkers. And a biomarker is detectable in an image. In medicine, an imaging biomarker is a feature of an image relevant to a patient diagnosis. This is very cool because in the injury world to the ligaments of the spine, these biomarkers are the only measurable. They're the only ones that are quantifiable. Right? So anytime that you injure ligaments to a joint, it causes excessive motion in the joint. I don't care if it's your shoulder, your knee, your finger, your big toe, or any of the joints of the spine. It causes excessive motion. So we know excessive motion back and forth of less than 1 millimeter is normal, of greater than 1, or of 1 millimeter to up to 3.49 is abnormal. It's grade 2, moderate sprain finding. 3.5 and above is severe, grade 3 sprain finding. And if we look at angular findings, we actually go, gosh, you know, anything below 7 is normal. That's a grade 1 mild sprain finding. Anything from 7 to 10.99 is moderate or abnormal, and anything 11 or above is severe, grade 3. Very, very simple, very objective. In the upper cervical, we know that if we have an offset in the atlas to axis relationship on stress, there should be no misalignment there. 0. We look at them all day long. You see them all day long with, you know, under 1, you know, 0.02, 0.1, with no misalignment. Anything over 1.7 is considered a bad prognosis. Anybody that does this type of testing is going to see patients with 4, 5, 6 millimeters. And it'll explain the headaches that they're having. It'll explain the dizziness that they'll have. It explains a lot of things that they're having. And it's very common in trauma. Right? Now, we also know that we can have a disc herniation, right? But we can have an MRI that shows up no disc herniation that has horrible, horrific levels of ligament damage. And we know that because we excessive motion test. And we know what the numbers are. Remember, we're talking deposition right now. So we also know that a patient can have a disc herniation with no excessive motion above, below, or at that joint level. Now, how would you know that unless you test it? You wouldn't. So there's no way to determine the severity and location of an injury in the spine without imaging testing. It's impossible. Can't do it. And when you try to do it and you go in a deposition, I don't care how confident you are. It doesn't make sense. And it's really easy to put a doctor on the hot seat. When I do seminars, and there's times where I'll go, does anybody want to go on the hot seat? I'll go on the hot seat. I go on the hot seat. Good. Ask me any question you want to ask. Pummel me with questions. Stump Dr. Kronk with questions in a deposition. Right? Or I get the doctor on the hot seat. It's so easy usually to get the person off, to get the person going down a place that they can't explain, and it sounds confusing. It kills deposition. So you look at this The difference between a disc herniation where there's no excessive motion and a disc herniation where there's severe excessive motion is incredible. And any patient that has this condition and is working with a doctor that doesn't know they have it is with a serious disservice. Now, you can say, again, think about this confusion, certainty. When you're certain about this, you don't care about doing diagnostic testing on the patient, and you're not worried about, well, is that, gosh, so many doctors cripple patients because they, in their mind, put the patient where they may be. So they think that this patient, oh, they couldn't pay for that. They're not able enough. They invalidate the patient's ability. And you don't want to do that. That is a killer to your practice. They will not refer to you because you're killing you're invalidating them. Now, that doesn't mean gouge the heck out of them. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is what you need, if what you need is this testing, you say, God, I need this testing. I need this blood test, or I need this x-ray, or I need this MRI. I need this testing, then that's what you need. And they will find a way. It's only when you are uncertain, and that's when it creeps in. So this is a severe spinal soft tissue injury, severe, and it comes up a lot. Now, for those of you that want to understand a little bit more about the pitfalls of MRI and about how X-ray and excessive motion testing is absolutely key, go to smartinjuryradiology.com and download this free report. It's taking off with downloads across the country. Actually download this. It's very simple read. It's very simple. Things do not have to be complicated. They really don't. So how does one practice? Well, first of all, you practice by having procedures in place. And you don't vary those procedures. I mean, right now, do you make a decision on whether you're going to do a consultation with a patient or not? Or is a consultation with a patient a standard procedure that you have? Could you imagine how weird it would be to like go, well, no, for this one we don't do a consult. Well, for this one we do a consultation. In this case I'm not going to do a consultation. All right? Most doctors do a consultation, and there's a very good injury consultation that you would want to do. Now that's not the scope of today. That's the scope of today is not documentation. I could do a program on documentation. Today was on deposition and diagnostic certainty, and I'm going to get to an example here very, very quickly to show you what I mean by this. All right? Then you're going to do an exam. And there's things that you do in the exam you're certain of. You don't vary them. Now, in an injury case where a doctor feels that the patient has a ligament injury, it is not possible to determine the severity and location of a ligament injury without imaging. The easiest imaging to do is to do stress testing. Now, if you're going to do stress testing and you're going to get really good at this stuff, guess what? You have got to take good x-rays. You don't take good x-rays, it's all for naught. So you have to take good x-rays. But you want to take good x-rays, then you want to have the excessive motion accurately measured. I'm going to tell you right now, in the injury world, you want to have it done external to you. You want it done by an unbiased party. That's what spinal kinetics is all about. That's what we're all about. We're all about helping doctors to deliver a testing service that is so important in my world, and I'd love for it to be so important in your world that you understand that it's just very, very important. So you want to have it done with an unbiased third party. That's how you want to do it, right? So if you need a disc MRI, fine, you get the disc MRI. If you need a CAT scan because you think you have a fracture, you get the fracture. You get it documented. Now, everything else from that point is easy. Everything else from that point is easy because once that foundation is in place, all of your documentation is in place. All the patient's benefit access is in place. All of the foundation for a fantastic deposition or a court trial are in place. So what's so hard about that? Well, like I said, the only way, and I'm hoping that you will have questions today, because if any of you are going, well, what about this, or what about that, or what about this, I'm fine. Let's have as many questions as possible. There is nothing hard about it. It's just not done. You're just not doing it. We know in spinal kinetics, a lot of doctors are just not doing it. Or they're doing it on one or two or a case here or there, or gosh, I try it, and then 3 months later, maybe I try it again, and then I don't see that. We don't see it the doctor for 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. Okay, now I'm doing it again. That's uncertainty. And for those of you that have or want to spend time with me one-on-one, you just call my staff and set up an appointment with me. I love spending time with doctors that want to grow injury practices. And that's real easy. You just call Spinal Kinetics at 877-508-9729, and Tanya will put you right on my schedule. So let's give a real live example here. Okay, here's a patient that comes in, bad accident, accident number 1. Let's say I'm gonna alter the time sequence. This occurs in May 1st of 2017. Seriously bad accident. Okay, lots of damage to the car. Okay, how much damage to the individual? How much damage to the spine? Well, from an excessive motion study, if we look at the excessive motion here, this is a moderate sprain finding, and it's a very low moderate sprain finding, right? Now, accident 2 is 30 days later, but accident 2, there's almost no damage to the car. Now you have a problem, right? Now, I will do a webinar in the future on low impact, no injury, because the science right now is outrageous. Like, anybody who looks at the science goes, oh my God, why would I even spend any time with low impact, no injury? Of course you can have injury with low impact. Matter of fact, some of the most damaging injury comes with low back injury, with low impact. With the science backs it up, right? So, but here we have, remember, we have a mechanism of injury, right? We have the mechanism, hey, they were in an auto collision. And then we have the injury. The injury is the derangement to the body tissue. So we got to know, how bad is it, you know? Did they cut their finger, or did they cut their finger off? We have to know how bad is the derangement. In the spine, we can do that very easily with excessive motion testing. So we look at a month later, low impact. Okay, so we have a moderate grade 2 sprain finding, and we have a moderate sprain finding that is very close to the same. Now, I look at these a lot, and I go, oh, okay, wait a second. Something changed right in here on this initial. Now, still, if you were to say, is it moderate? Yes. Now, let's look at the angular findings. Okay, accident 1, normal. Accident 2, severe. Rateable. Severe damage where? Right at C4. Right in the area based on the translation. Now, I look at these a lot. What I just showed you is really high level. You don't have to be at that level at first, because a lot of you you're not even testing, so you don't even know, right? But right here, now you have severe. Now, somebody can argue what? What's the argument going to be? Oh, there wasn't much impact. Everything was caused by the damage here. Insurance company 2 wants to say it was all caused by insurance company 1, and the doctor gets very confused. I know, I've been there. I've been confused. It's been a long time. And it's not confusing at all. You have to do your routine, and then you have to look at the data. And it becomes very, very easy. Now, that becomes extremely easy to present in deposition, and it becomes extremely easy to present in court testimony, court trial, and it totally holds up. Now, I'm going to end a little bit with this slide right here. Okay, this is a slide of a whiplash-injured truck driver. Now, I participated in this case. right? This was a case, now I didn't do the hard work. The hard work was done by the attorney and the treating provider. I just did the digitized menstruation report, right? Now, this person received a verdict of $1 million. They had $18,000 worth of care. Guess how much of that? I think 70 or 80% of that was chiropractic care. Now, they did have, they went to an orthopedist, and the orthopedist said, look, they've got some, they're going to potentially need a surgical fusion. Based on what? Based on the excessive motion that showed up from what? The injury. Based on the injury. Now, they also injured their shoulder. So they felt that they may need a surgical procedure on the shoulder. Okay, so they said, look, there could be some future medical care that's needed. $18,000 here. What was the settlement? $1 million. Now, I'm not going to spend any time telling you how much this was attacked, how much this was fought. At the end of the day, what couldn't be fought was what, doctors? The diagnosis. And the whole thing evolved around the diagnosis, not the specific, oh, what code are you talking about, Dr. Khan? Are you talking about an M3.041 or an M3.5? It's not that. It's the actual injury. You can code it however you can code it as a spinal instability, you can code it as a sprain, you can code it as ligament laxity. And then what it came down to is, did you have the objective evidence to be able to explain exactly why this person had what they had? The answer to that question was yes. But I can go into offices all day long and go into injury clinics and go, okay, what's the patient's injury here? What's the severity and location of their injury? And it's not known. That is an absolute killer. And again, that's what we're all about at Spinal Kinetics. Now, all I wanted you to get from today was the understanding, and I know that you did, of that certainty. For those of you that want to spend some more time with me or you have questions, I urge you to call my staff at 877-508-9729 and get on my schedule. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk. For those of you that are not currently spinal ligament injury tested, you're not excessive motion testing and want to, go to www.thespinalkinetics.com. And for those of you that want a copy of that report on the MRI, go to smartinjuryradiology.com. Okay, so that concludes the program. We do programs twice a month on various topics. I will do one shortly here on no impact, no injury. I may do one on documentation. I don't know. If you have anything that you want us to do one on, just call in again to my staff and tell them what you'd like to see a program on. And if we get enough doctors who have enough interest on it, we'll do a program on it. I have no problem with that at all. All right, so now it comes to question and answer. So if you have a question, you just type the question in the question box. Any question. In deposition, how do you navigate with certainty without coming across an advocate for your patient? This is a absolutely fantastic question. Oh my gosh, I'm glad you couldn't have. This was like a softball for me. I get to hit it out of the park. That is the easiest thing to answer in the world, because you're using clinical rationale and you're not arguing for the patient. You're arguing for you're not even arguing. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to argue. All you have to do is present. Patient has auto trauma. What can an auto trauma cause to the spine? Well, there's three things. It can break it, it can herniate it, which is a ligament injury, or it can cause excessive motion. Those are the three things that you could, those are the three derangement patterns. So you're just explaining in a very calm and comfortable way what the patient has. Now, the consensus around it explains all the rest. Like I could take you out to Medscape and go, okay, what do you have? Well, I have a cranial-cervical junction problem. Oh, okay, good. How did you get it? Well, I had it because we tested and we did lateral bend on A to P open mouth, and look, you know, I've got a 4.5 millimeter problem here. I've got craniocervical junction syndrome due to ligament injury in the craniocervical junction. And you go, okay, look that up. Look that up on the internet. You'll drop your jaw of what the symptoms are and what it causes. You don't have to explain it anymore. That's the beauty of this. Your certainty comes from the fact that everyone agrees with what you're certain about when it comes to this. Okay, here's a comment. I would love to see a reference for that lateral A to P greater than 1.7 is a bad prognosis. That reference does not show up in the SK reports, and I don't see it in the 5th edition AMA. It sure does, shows up in every single cervical report that we do. You just have to look down at the references. And here's the thing. I would love to see a better reference too. The question I would have to you is, can you get us one? Because if you have one, or there is one, we'll do better. You have to understand that in some respects, this area is an untraversed area. Right? You think this is heavily traversed. It's not. What I say to so many doctors, and they don't really get the whole idea of it, is that the rare doctor is one that can diagnose a ligament. That's the rare doctor. So, you know, we'll put in any references. That's the best one we can find. And the only reason why we put in references is to help the doctor. But you can go out and you can do all kinds of research today. It's very easy to do research and look to see. And if there's something that you like better, submit it to us. We'll take a look at putting it in. What x-rays do you recommend on initial exam? Stress x-rays. If you're talking cervical spine, A to P open mouth, lateral, flexion, extension, A to P open mouth, lateral bend right, and lateral bend left. If you like obliques, then do obliques. If you're talking about the lumbar spine, A to P, lateral, flexion, and extension. Those are what I recommend. And I recommend them right away because I did them right away in my own private practice. From my own private practice from 1995 or 1996, right in that time until 2004, on every case that I thought I had a ligament injury in, I sent out for a test on. Once I found a service for me that did intersegmental motion testing, I was never without it. It became part of my procedure. That's why I'm talking nationally today, somewhat 20-some years later. That's why when I'm in a deposition, I can hit it out of the park. That's why I can have the certainty and the calmness and the comfortableness and all of that, because I've been doing it for a very long time. And I'm very certain of what I know. Now, I'm also certain of what I don't know. And that's equally as important. So one of the things that comes up is, well, what if there's pain or inflammation that's retarding or restricting the motion? You see that, doctors. You see it. The patient can't move, fine. You actually put in your notes, patient cannot move. I'm going to do care for 1 month, 2 weeks, whatever. We're going to get some pain reduction, inflammation reduction. Then we're going to do the stress testing, x-rays. Then we're going to send out for it. You just document it. But it's rare. So it's right away. You want to do it right away. Okay. What do you recommend on an initial exam? Too open of a question. It's too open of a question. Being thorough, and I don't mean to be a wise guy on that, doctor, but it's just it's a little too open. I'm not sure what you mean. How do you defend adjusting ligament instability? Wouldn't chiropractic adjustments be contraindicated? Good. So for the doctor that I have, I wish we could get on the call. I wish you were on a call with me right now, because I would take you through a process that'll change your life. And I can't really do it in an open group thing. I can try to do it, but it's not nearly as effective. Okay? Because the first question I would ask you is the question you just asked me. Okay? How do you defend, why would your adjustment help a ligament instability? My question to you, doctor, is how can you have a misalignment of the vertebra without a ligament instability? How can the ligament crack the casing that keeps it aligned and misaligned without cracking the casing? It's not possible. You're adjusting them all day long. You just don't know why or how, where, or why. So that's uncertainty. So here's the why. Dr. Kronk, are you meaning to say that you can adjust a spinal instability? Well, first of all, doctors, a subluxation is a spinal instability. A subluxation is not a misalignment of the vertebra. So too many doctors today, too many doctors in my field today don't know what a subluxation is. It's a misalignment of the vertebra or a abnormal motion pattern of the vertebra that causes nerve interference. That's what it is. Now, it has to have nerve interference. It has to have a clinical symptom. Now, as soon as you remove the clinical symptom, you remove the muscle weakness, you remove the abnormal sensation, you remove the symptom associated with the malposition or malmovement, you've removed the subluxation. You may not have corrected the malmovement, and you may not have corrected the malposition, but you've knocked out the clinical entity called a spinal subluxation, also called a spinal instability. So how does an adjustment do that? It's a great question. Adjustments affect the mechanoreceptors in the ligaments. When the ligaments are damaged, the mechanoreceptors go offline, and it creates a corrupted message into the neuromuscular control center. That's the center that controls the muscles. So the ligament has a sensor in it. And when the sensor feels pressure, it communicates immediately across to the muscle to adjust. Now, if the mechanoreceptor is not there and it's not functioning, then you have an abnormal message. And that abnormal message goes straight across to the muscle and produces an abnormal muscle response pattern. When you do an adjustment, you bring the mechanoreceptors back online, total science, total backed up, total consensus. And what does it do? It normalizes the communication into the muscle system so that you have normalized muscle stability, which is absolutely 1000% necessary, especially when you damage the ligament. So that's how my adjustment helps a spinal instability. Does that make sense? Does that communicate to you? I'm asking the doctor to ask the question. Just type it in. Does that make sense? Does that communicate to you? Does that communicate to anybody? Absolutely. Okay, good. Let's see, what's my next question? Great questions too, by the way, doctors. Absolutely phenomenal questions. I got to tell you, this is not stuff that you learn in school. It's just not. I didn't, you didn't, and it's not your fault. It's not really your, it's not, you can't know what you haven't run into. Are there other body parts, i.e. extremities, that we are seeing ligament instability due to crashes? Absolutely. Okay. The only problem is it's not as codified as the spine. If you have a shoulder injury, you're going to have laxity into the shoulder joint, but there's no way to really measure it. So there's no real X-ray measurement system to measure the excessive motion, and there's really no stress testing set up. If you sprain your ankle, you're going to cause laxity in the joints of the ankle, but there is no testing. There's no stress testing. There's no image testing for that. There may become in the future, I don't know, maybe a DMX person or a video fluoro person is figuring out some way to do that. I don't know, but there isn't right now. So the beauty of it is the main thing that all of you doctors focus on, which is the spine. That's your bread and butter. That's the heart and soul of what you do. That's the heart and soul that will make you, you know, you look at your lifetime earning potential. What I'm sharing with you today can 2x it, 10x it, 100x it. Sky is the limit. But it's your earning potential. The other things are part of it, but that spine is where you're at. How do you approach an attorney with this material? They always seem doubtful with your procedures. They seem to feel more comfortable with the medical. Good. They're medical procedures. Spinal Kinetics is a medical company. All board certified medical doctors. Okay, it's no different than medical doctors that read for an MRI to determine if you got a disc herniation. It's a medical procedure. And how you approach an attorney is with certainty. I have a program where I teach. It's an online program. I don't want to go into it today. Again, go into the Smart Injury Radiology because I don't want this to be about trying to sell anything or anything else. But I have a program that it's $97 a month, and I teach doctors how to go in and present this material to attorneys. It's so ungodly easy, and it's fun. Now, are you going to go into a uncertain, unknowing person or persons to present this? Yes, you are. I do it all day long. I do it with doctors. I do it with attorneys. I do it with medical doctors. I do it with I do it all day long. It's fun. But what makes it fun is, have you ever been certain about something and all of a sudden you're around a couple of people that are confused about the same thing? You're certain about a stock. Right? You're dead set certain this is going to be amazing. Or, I don't know, a purchase of some kind. And all of a sudden somebody starts going, I don't know. They're confused about it, right? And then that confusion is contagious. And it's repelling. And I know that'll sound a little bit like I'm preaching, but it's so true. And it's so easy to not be that way, but it does take practice. That takes practice. All right. Great questions too, by the way. You're right. Technically, your reference to is MRI, not X-ray. I apologize. Right. With volume average on MRI, it's probably less than 1.7 millimeters. That's totally true. That's absolutely true. So, so here's the thing. And this will be a little tricky, but I think you'll get this. It's not data. See, you can derive your certainty from a via something else, via research. And I'm going to tell you right now, you won't even do it via research, because what happens with the research is research gets into, okay, gosh, this is off, or we change this, or anything else. What you have to understand is when you have a craniocervical junction ligament injury, the atlas and the axis do not line up on stress testing. I could build or help build a huge headache clinic just on that knowledge alone. There's 38 million Americans that have chronic headaches, chronic migraines, and they have, the majority of them will have damage in the craniocervical junction or in the top part of the cervical spine. It's there. All you got to do is test for it and look for it. Now, what draws a person in? Does a person get drawn in for a procedure because the doctor is so good at what? I mean, if I want to go to a cancer doctor, do I want to go to a doctor who's a generalist in the diagnosis of cancer? No, I want somebody who is super laser focused, accurate in diagnosing something. That's the first step. So it's absolutely the key. Okay, is there measurements for lateral bending of the lumbar spine for ligament instability? There's no consensus on the numbers, and it's impossible. A company like ours could never do it because it's impossible to find the anatomical points on the x-rays. If you saw what comes into spinal kinetics now, just on lateral flexion extension, just on bending forward and bending backwards, flexion extension, not bending side to side. So on the bending side to side, I don't even look at it because there's no consensus with it. See, I'm a consensus guy. What I liked in private practice that made my certainty so high is going on consensus and my own personal observations. That's always your strongest sense. That's what will cause the most certainty for you, is your personal sense of observation. I'm going to tell you right now, if you have 200 stress tests under your belt, measured accurately, you looked at them, and you've managed the patients underneath those findings, you'll teach this. You'll teach this, this material. You'll be a Michael Jordan in this field. Okay? Because you'll gain experience. Remember, experience is not gained by looking or thinking or reading. Experience is gained by doing. And I've done a whole program where I said, look, you can have an educator who says they're experienced, but they're an educator. They're educating all the top new engineers coming off the line. But if you put them out on a bridge site, they're one lost bird. They couldn't build a bridge that they're teaching people to build. Right? And the person that can build the bridge knows all the crap that's being taught that doesn't matter. It doesn't actually, it has nothing to do with anything. And that's why I always recommend get on the phone with me, because I'll help you cut through the crap. There's a lot of crap out there that just really doesn't matter when it comes to this. Thanks, Doc. I want to re-listen to this one several times. Okay, great. Got to run. You're welcome, Doctor. So that's what I have this morning. Let me see. Let me see if there's. I see you're starting to decrease the questions. And normally I try to go, not so long. So I apologize for going a little bit longer today, but we went longer today because the questions were absolutely fantastic. Doctors, I urge you to start practicing. Test, 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 test. It can make good careers, great careers. It really can, because the more that you learn, the more that you'll earn. And what I mean by that is the more you exchange with your environment, with your patients, and the more value you add to your service, the more value they'll contribute to you. So doctors, I know you're doing that out there right now. I appreciate you taking the time this morning to listen to me. I thank you very much, and you have a great rest of the week, and listen for, or look for our future webinars on various topics. And again, if you have one that you'd like to see, call in and let us know. Thank you very much.